Hello, welcome to Overwatch Tips, Tricks, Review. Today we're going to be talking about one of the big old plus symbol boys. Well, I guess I shouldn't say plus symbol boys. That might make you think we're talking about math. And I'm not a teacher. I'm not qualified for that. So today we're talking about one of the cross boys. Nope, not that. Never mind. That just makes it feel like we're talking about Jesus. So today we're going to be talking about a support character. And that character's big old name is Ana. So this is a pretty exciting day for me. This is the first character that we're talking about that has an actual gun. You know, she decided to pull it out of the good old safe, go to war, instead of bringing, a bow or a hammer or whatever else I've talked about recently. So just jumping into it, Ana steps into the arena weighing about a good old 200 HP, and she's a nimble little character that lacks in the ways of content. So, jumping into her abilities, we have her primary weapon, which is her Biotic Rifle. This weapon's pretty cool because it just kind of shoots, like giant needles at people. And if she doesn't like you, it does like poison damage to you. But if she likes you, then it's gonna do, it's gonna heal you. It's gonna make you feel better. Give you that, vaccine shot or something. So, Ana's rifle does 70 damage in just above half a second, and then the same thing with healing. It's 70 healing in, about half a second. Now, Ana is one of the few characters in this lineup that can actually use the scope on her weapon. So you can just kind of hip fire, or you could zoom in and, get those sweet, sweet headshots. But I've deceived you, because you cannot get headshots with Ana. Ana is one of those few characters in the game that you can't get headshots with her primary weapon, nor her abilities. So that's kind of a downside, and it kind of limits her damage output due to the fact that she can only do, 70 damage per shot. But something very interesting about Ana is that firing her weapon from hipfire or scoped in makes a huge difference. And that's mainly because whenever she's firing with hipfire, her bullet counts as a projectile. And whenever she's scoped in, she actually gets what's called hit scan. So I've never talked about hit scan on this at all, and I never really knew what it was until recently, but hit scan and just firing a weapon and it being counted as a projectile are completely different things and act completely different. So anytime she's using her hip fire and she's just kind of shooting at things, she has to lead her shot because her bullet now has a travel speed and it now has a downfall, and it makes it to where you have to predict your enemy's movement in order to actually hit them. But when she's zoomed in, or scoped in, she doesn't have to predict where her enemy's going to be or what they're going to do. Because hit scan makes it to where if you're aiming at something and your crosshair is on something, as soon as you click your button, your fire button, it will hit the target exactly where you aimed your crosshair. So keep that in mind, because Ana's a really good opponent against someone like Pharah, who moves around a bunch in the air, because all she has to do is get her crosshairs on Pharah, and then, well, that's 70 damage right off the bat. Next up, we have Ana's Sleep Dart. Now, this lady just kind of, pulls out of her trench coat a Glock with a giant needle in it, shoots you, and she says, night-night. Now, her sleep dart only does 5 points of damage, but it can put an enemy to sleep for up to 5 seconds, unless they are damaged by an outside source, which immediately, if you're unconscious and somebody comes punching you in the face, well, I guess you just jump up and you immediately get back into the fight. Ana's next ability is her Biotic Grenade. So this is kind of like a Molotov that she just kind of carries around in her pocket, and, it breaks, and it either throws good apple juice on you, or it poisons you and makes you sad. Her grenade is kind of like a area of effect splash bomb, and if she hits enemies with it, each enemy in the area will take 60 damage, and will also not be able to be healed for a short amount of time. But if she hits allies with it, then they are immediately healed 100 health, and they get a healing boost for a short amount of time. And finally, in Ana's arsenal of needles, she has her Nano Boost. She basically injects an ally with steroids from a distance, which gives them 50% damage, 250 instant health, and they also take a 50% damage reduction. So what I get out of this is that for 8 seconds, you have a character that's jacked up on Mountain Dew and doesn't really care about your bullets. And they will come sprinting at you with full knowledge that they can win a one-on-one fight. So let's go ahead and talk about some tips and tricks for the doctor lady. So there's a few different ways that you can play Ana, and that's really being behind your team, or being in the middle of your team. I definitely never suggest just running head first with Ana, just because she doesn't have the survivability, she doesn't have the mobility, and she really doesn't do enough damage to take out most characters that you'll run into when you're leading the charge. Now, something that I've learned about Ana in specific over, as long as I've played this game is that she's not as good of a healer as she is a support character. I mean, don't get me wrong, 70 healing per shot isn't anything to scoff at, and then her grenade can boost healing on the entire team, which can really get your team out of tough situations if you're, on the losing side of a fight. But to be honest, it's a lot more useful most of the time to use that grenade and throw it at your enemies. It can't go through shields, so you do have to be very careful about that. But if you can make it to where your enemies can't be healed, if it's even for a couple of seconds, that could be devastating to their entire team. Another benefit of staying behind the team is you can watch your flanks, and that sleep dart that you have can become super crucial, because if you have, let's say, a Hog or a Soldier or McCree or a Hanzo, anybody sneaking up behind you that can do mass amounts of damage, you could put him to sleep, and then since nothing else is aimed that way, he won't be woken up, and you'll have enough time to warn your entire team that there's someone else there about to take out your healers. Now, if we talk about Ana's ult charge, it seems like she gets the best ult charge from doing damage to enemies. Now, don't get me wrong, whenever you're healing allies, that also boosts your ult charge, but it almost feels like she gets a little bit more anytime she's doing damage to the enemy line. Oh, before I forget, another really good way to use Ana's sleep dart is if someone's ulting. If an enemy is ulting, and this, applies for if they're sneaking behind the team, even if they're in front of the team, if it's a McCree, Soldier, really anyone, now that I think about it, anyone that's ulting, if you put them to sleep, that cancels their ult completely. Ana has just the perfect ult canceling ability. So I'd say whenever you're in a team fight, try not to spam your sleep dart, because it does have a rather long cooldown of, 12 seconds, which doesn't seem like it's that long in, real time, but when it comes to team fights, an entire team fight can be done in 12 seconds. I'd definitely say early game, you can use your sleep dart whenever you want, because everyone starts at 0% ult charge, so it doesn't really matter. That 12 seconds won't make up too much. Maybe Hanzo will get his ult in 12 seconds because he's a maniac, but other than that, use as much as you want. But when you get even a little bit into the game and you know that the enemies are building ults and that your team's building ults and whatnot, I'd save it. Just save it for whenever the enemy ults, or for whenever the enemy sneaks up on the team. It'll end up working out better than if you're in a team fight and you're just sleeping random enemies and then, they get shot and they're immediately awake. Like, yeah, does it give that split second of the enemy not being able to attack? Great. But it is much more useful to cancel out something that can devastate your team versus them just kind of hurting your team. Another really good reason for staying behind your team and just kind of supporting them from the rear is to take out Pharahs. Pharahs and Echoes, two characters that have very high mobility, especially in the air, and are hard to hit if you don't have hit scan. But, like we talked about before, Ana has hit scan whenever she's scoped in. So it's very easy for Ana to take these enemies out, and 70 damage, it's not a lot, but to squishier characters like Echo and Pharah, it's quite a bit. You hit them 3 times and then they're done. And if they're focused on your main team and not on you, then hitting them 3 times is easy. It should take about 3 seconds. So all in all, I'd say, if you want to be a good Ana, stay behind your team, cock block enemy ults, and try to think of being a support character versus a healer, because there is a massive difference. And don't worry too much about being in the back line and being by yourself and, like a monkey or something jumping on you, because you always have your Biotic Grenade and you always have your sleep dart, because if you can put him to sleep, and then Biotic Grenade right under your feet on top of him, then that's going to heal you for 100 as to, however much damage that he did to you, and that's going to immediately damage him for 60, and he's not going to be able to heal. So then you can pop him a few times with your rifle, if you have a team that you're playing with, and you can tell them to turn around because you're getting banged. But at the end of it, as long as you're able to hit that sleep dart and, immediately throw the Biotic Grenade underneath yourself and hit the enemy with it as well, then you should be good. As for Ana's ultimate, to be honest, you should wait until team fights or until one of your teammates is ulting. And not every teammate that's ulting, but an ult that does a mass amount of damage. So let's go with like Soldier, or you can go with even a Moira, Pharah. Rein is an amazing choice. Also, it's not just ults that you can save it for, but the part of the team fight that I was trying to talk about is ulting one of your tanks that will push forward into the enemy line and take that reduced damage, and also just be generally very annoying to them. To be honest, the best tank, in my opinion, to use Ana's Nano Boost on will be Reinhardt. He turns into a absolute unit. Now, don't get me wrong, people like Hog and Diva are also very good to use it on. I wouldn't say so much Zarya, because she can kind of protect herself already with her orb, and she already does a lot of damage, but I personally would much rather use Ana's Nano Boost on Diva, Rein, Hog, or even Orisa. So, with all that put together, I personally, now remember this, personally, would give Ana a 5 steroid shots out of 10. Now, the only reason being for that, I'm a horrid shot. Even though Ana has hit scan, I can never hit my shot. And that sleep dart, I've probably put maybe 8 enemies to sleep in my entire career. But if I were better at Ana, I would absolutely give her 10 out of 10 for support and 9 out of 10 as being an actual healer. The amount of debuffs and buffs alone give me the confidence to say that Ana could be the best support character in the entire game. Now when it comes down to being a healer, you can't really convince me that she can out-heal a Moira or a Mercy. But then again, I've never personally seen it. Anything could happen. So if you guys like this video, make sure to give that like button a steroid shot, and leave a comment telling me who I should do next. I'll see you next time. Bye!